Hey friends, and welcome back to another video essay. Today we're going to be talking about Project Pan. So let's get into it. Over the past year, a challenge has really taken over TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And it's not a skincare hack, it's not a dance, and it's definitely not a new product launch. It's called Project Pan. And at first glance, it may seem refreshingly simple. Instead of buying more, people are challenging themselves to use up what they already own, to finally hit pan on that blush that's been sitting in the back of the drawer for months, or to finish the serum that they bought on a whim, or to rediscover forgotten favorites and maybe rethink the endless cycle of consumption that we've all been caught up in. But here's where things get really interesting. As the movement has grown, so has a pretty sharp critique, and it's one that gets to the heart of our culture's complicated relationship with guilt, consumption, and public transformation. If you scroll through the Project Pan hashtag on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, you'll find hundreds of creators laying out entire collections of makeup and skincare, sometimes dozens, even hundreds of products, perfectly lined up, beautifully lit. And these before shots have become almost a genre of their own, drawers overflowing with palettes, bins filled with unopened lipsticks, skincare stashes that could last a decade. And while these videos are meant to signal change, look how much I'm committing to use up, for some viewers they hit differently. A growing number of people are asking, should we really be celebrating this? Should we be cheering people on for working through massive piles of stuff? Or should we be questioning why that excess was normalized in the first place? In other words, does Project Pan truly challenge overconsumption, or does it sometimes aestheticize it? It's a tension that's sparking real debate online. On one hand, Project Pan offers a tangible, empowering way to break free from endless buying cycles. And on the other, it risks centering and romanticizing the very behavior it claims to resist. And honestly, that tension is exactly why this trend is so fascinating, because it's not just about makeup or skincare, it's about how we publicly negotiate guilt, growth, and identity in a culture built on more. So in today's video, we're going to dive deeper. We're going to look at how Project Pan rose to internet fame in 2025 and why it resonated so strongly. And of course, the critiques that are sort of reshaping the conversation. And maybe by the end, we'll have a clearer picture of what mindful consumption really looks like in a social media age. By the way, if you're new here, my name is Imi, and I have a few series running at the moment about low buy year, Project Pantry, rebuilding all of my routines, and lots of video essays on consumption and how social media plays a role in how we overconsume. So if any of that interests you, feel free to subscribe so you never miss another video. And if you like the video, please consider giving it a like, as it really helps to support my channel. Okay, grab a cup of tea and let's get into it. To understand why Project Pan has really struck such a cultural nerve in 2025, we need to zoom out. This isn't just a quirky beauty trend, it's emerging at the intersection of rising economic pressure, burnout from overconsumption, and a growing appetite for more intentional living. Over the past few years, many of us have been caught in a loop of buying to feel better. I certainly know that I have, and was the main driver for my low buy year, actually. That little serotonin hit of a package arriving at the door, the endless churn of newness pushed by brands and influencers alike. But as inflation bites and sustainability enters mainstream conversation, more people are questioning that cycle. And that's where Project Pan steps in. Not as a flashy new challenge, but as a quiet form of resistance, a way of saying, I already have enough, let's start here. Project Pan isn't new. The idea has been floating around beauty forums and YouTube corners since, I think, the mid-2010s, when makeup lovers began challenging themselves to hit pan on products rather than constantly chasing the next release. But for nearly a decade, it sat on the periphery, a kind of like niche subculture for makeup enthusiasts and minimalists quietly resisting haul culture. Then we fast forward to 2025, and something very noticeably shifted. The trend suddenly broke out of its niche and landed right in the middle of mainstream internet culture. On TikTok alone, the hashtag Project Pan 2025 has racked up millions of views in just a few months. You have monthly empties videos that have become their own genre, and influencers filmed glossy inventory tours setting ambitious goals to use up entire collections, and everyday users, not just beauty gurus, joined in, tracking their progress through spreadsheets, challenge templates, and community hashtags. And I think part of its appeal lies in its simplicity. In a digital landscape saturated with productivity hacks and expensive lifestyle overhauls, Project Pan offers a low barrier entry point. Just use what you already have. There's no need for new tools, subscriptions, or aesthetic setups, though many do make it look beautiful. It's a trend that meets people where they already are. So overwhelmed drawers, half-empty bottles, and the quiet guilt of too much stuff. But timing also played a huge role. By 2025, I think us as consumers were feeling the cumulative weight of several cultural forces. Economic pressures made people more conscious of waste and spending. Sustainability became less of a niche interest and more of a mainstream expectation. And crucially, haul culture began to lose its shine. After years of endless unboxings and what I bought this week hauls, I think many of us grew weary of being sold to, and Project Pan arrived as a kind of antidote to this, a way to participate in beauty culture without constantly consuming. And influencers were quick to pick up on the shift. Some turned Project Pan into long-term storytelling arcs documenting month-by-month processes, and others used it to differentiate themselves in a saturated market, branding themselves as thoughtful, intentional consumers. And as more creators joined in, the trend gained legitimacy and momentum, evolving from a personal challenge into a kind of collective movement. I've noticed lots of my favorite content creators engaging in Project Pan, and I've even myself been inspired to embark on the challenge, though I don't really have the kind of same amount of beauty products I've seen others display, but I don't think that necessarily matters to participate. As for some, like me, it's just simply a way to take another look at what I have and make sure it's getting used and isn't being wasted. But as the movement grew, so did a sharp critique, as mentioned before, one that exposed attention at the very heart of Project Pan. And this criticism goes something like this. Many of the people participating in these challenges wouldn't need to pan so many products in the first place if they hadn't overconsumed to begin with. Scroll through the hashtag and you'll see it. Drawers overflowing with palettes, boxes of unopened lipsticks, skincare routines that could last a decade. And these before shots are often filmed beautifully with clean flat lays and perfect lighting. But for some viewers, they're not inspiring, they're just very jarring. So instead of seeing mindful consumption, critics see the aestheticization of excess. The pile itself becomes the hook, and in a culture that's constantly grappling with consumer guilt, that can be a tricky line to walk. There's also a question of who the movement centers. So for people who've always consumed modestly, or who don't have the disposable income to build these massive collections in the first place, Project Pan can feel alienating. It places the overconsumer's redemption arc at the center of conversation, while sidelining those who were never part of the problem to begin with. In other words, it risks celebrating people for cleaning up messes that in many cases they created themselves. Not all cases, but many. And that's not to say that those redemption arcs are invalid. Far from it. Many people accumulated their collections during periods of stress, through the dopamine rush of online shopping, honestly under the influence of relentless marketing. And beauty marketing is particularly insidious because they really prey on our insecurities. I think that Project Pan can genuinely be a transformative tool for shifting those habits. But when the act of using things up becomes a form of content, it does open the door for performance. And this is where things get a little tricky, and where a positive trend could be co-opted for clout or internet relatability. This is especially visible on social media. There's a distinct visual language that's developed around Project Pan. Stacks of products laid out like inventory audits, monthly empty videos, spreadsheets, updates, glossy progress shots. And on one hand, these visuals make the movement tangible. You can literally see the progress, but they also risk romanticizing the very abundance they're meant to challenge. The sheer size of the stash becomes part of the spectacle. And this tension between authentic change and performative consumption isn't unique to Project Pan. We've seen similar critiques in minimalism, zero waste living, and low buy challenges. But because Project Pan operates within the beauty community, a space already deeply entwined with consumer identity, the contrast is especially stark. It's the difference between quietly using up a lipstick and turning that process into a series of monthly monetizable updates. What's fascinating though is this critique hasn't killed the movement. If anything, it's reshaping it, which is great. We're seeing more creators acknowledge their privilege and the scale of their collections upfront instead of glossing over it. And others are pairing Project Pan with a no-buy or a low-buy challenge and addressing the root of the problem rather than just the symptoms. And there are new versions of the challenge like mini pans or mindful start projects, and these are emerging to make the movement more accessible to people who never had huge collections to begin with. In a way, the critique is forcing Project Pan to grow up, and it's no longer just about hitting pan on a product, it's about confronting the cultural forces that made overconsumption normal in the first place. When you step back, Project Pan is about far more than just simply finishing a bottle of serum or finally seeing the bottom of a pan. It's a mirror held up not just to our own makeup drawers, but to the cultural forces that filled them in the first place. For years, we've been taught that consumption is identity. The things we own signal who we are and what we value, and where we belong, and sometimes even our morality. In the beauty space, this became especially intense. The constant newness, the must-have drops, the limited edition items, the language of self-care intertwined with buying. Over time, that culture created not just overflowing drawers, but also a kind of emotional clutter, guilt, decision fatigue, that nagging feeling of never being quite enough without something new to add to the basket. So Project Pan at its best is a small but radical rejection of that cycle. It says, I don't need more to participate. It invites us to look inward at what we already own and what we already love, and to create meaning through use, not acquisition. It reframes the act of finishing something not as scarcity, but as satisfaction. But the critique that we explored shows that good intentions aren't always simple. When personal transformation is played out in public, especially on monetized platforms, it's easy for that act of resistance to be flattened into just another form of content. A lipstick becomes not just something to use, but a storyline. A spreadsheet becomes a brand. And the line between mindful living and performative minimalism gets blurry. And maybe that's inevitable. We live in a digital world where almost everything, including our attempts to consume less, happens on platforms designed to sell us more. Project Pan exists within that contradiction, and it's both a response to consumer culture and a participant in it. It's a personal act broadcast collectively, a challenge that's simultaneously deeply individual and completely entangled with social media dynamics. But perhaps that's exactly what makes it meaningful. The fact that people are engaging with these tensions, questioning their habits, sharing their reflections, evolving the movement, shows a cultural shift. We're no longer satisfied with surface level solutions. We're looking for deeper, slower, more honest ways of participating in the world around us. And the future of Project Pan might not look like towering stashes and monthly empty videos. It might look quieter, smaller, more integrated into everyday life. Maybe it becomes less about redemption arcs and more about prevention, normalizing the idea that mindful consumption doesn't have to come after overconsumption. It can start before. And honestly, that's what excites me the most. Not the perfectly curated spreadsheets or the aesthetic flat lays, but the idea that more people are willing to pause to look at what they already have and to redefine what enough means to themselves. Because if Project Pan has taught us anything, it's that change doesn't always have to be loud or shiny. Sometimes it starts quietly with a single product you already own and decision to use it fully, intentionally, and without needing more. So those are just my thoughts on Project Pan. If you enjoyed this video essay, you might like the other one I made on why the no buy trend took over in 2025. I'll make sure to link it down below if you're interested. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you see Project Pan as a genuine form of resistance, or does this critique resonate with you at all? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing so that you never miss another video essay. And again, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, as it really helps to support my channel. Okay, see you next time.